A skilled camera person is a treasure because they can help you bring your creative vision to life. And they can also do it in a way, I mean, a really good one gets out of the way, meaning you don't see them, you don't see their work. You are engulfed in the story or engulfed in whatever is being presented the way you want it presented. So if you have a good camera person, they will accomplish that for you because you're confident. I could be walking, moving around, and that person is already tracking, is right there at the right time and right location. They're able to sense where you're moving if this is something like a tutorial. If it's more of a professional shot where you have people on a set, things like that, then it becomes something where you have your actors hit the marks, things like that. You can trust that the camera person is there. They follow direction very well. They know their equipment. So we're going to give you a few tips on what to avoid when you're shooting. Tip number one that shows that your camera person is unprofessional or at least very new to their equipment, or even if they're not new to the equipment, they just don't have a lot of training. So part of it is do not shoot high. And so she's going to do that right now so that you can get this idea. So that means having a lot of headroom space for no reason whatsoever. And sometimes you may need that because of what's in the shot, the focus. Let's say I'm talking about something here and we're looking at a bird on a roost somewhere, then it may be okay to do that. But if the focus is on me, just do a little bit above my head, not much at all, and otherwise reframe the shot in a different way, because if we need to do something where she needs to go back, so we'll switch this out, she'll step back. So as she stepped back, she got a different reframing, and still keeps only just what's needed to make it not uncomfortable. That means if she puts that way up there, and when we look at a film that's like that, we are distracted because we're consciously trying to pull this down, or we're consciously thinking that we're missing something else below the frame. Because for no reason, meaning if I'm talking, I'm animating, I'm doing something else here, we want to see more of what is the subject in frame. And so when you have people filming too high, you've got too much headroom for no reason whatsoever, you've got to avoid that. Bring that back down and make that just right. So the other is making sure you don't shoot too low. And doing that, you can see that as I'm talking, if she just chops off a little bit of my head, or she just chops off to where just my eyes are showing, so, you can see how distracting that is. That is not a comfortable thing to look at, especially if there's any movement. And again, if the focus isn't on something that I'm holding here, perhaps, because if I'm holding something, let's say, I'm holding a card, maybe I'm doing this, then it really doesn't matter what's up here as much, because if I'm looking down here and this is the focus, then it really doesn't matter too much what's above that. But that has to be taken into account. Okay, the other is avoid shaky cam. Now, sometimes that can work, but that worked for one film, and I think we all know what film that was, and it worked for a while because it was kind of new. Then other people tried doing that, and it just made people nauseated. And it wasn't something that that is like, hey, let's do a shaky cam movie too. So you can see that right now she has an unstabilized footage, meaning the in-camera as well as the lens are not stabilized. So she's doing this by hand. So there is a little bit of that in there. Now, if she were to move with me like that, you would see a little bit more of the movement as we're going forward and backward and things like that. You'll see that there are little micro movements that really are amplified whenever we start moving. So we're going to put that back on camera. So first of all, let's take a look at if she were to try to introduce a little bit more. So she's going to talk and she's going to kind of just shake it, maybe to give that effect of, oh wow, this is nice and or we're running somewhere, or this is a very intense scene and that sort of thing, and you can see that shakiness come into play. But if your next scene is very stabilized, that's a ridiculous thing to do. So we're going to go from this point right now where it is unstabilized. Again, if it's moving very quickly and it's just going all over the place like that, even this is stabilized. I have it just ramped up to its highest position. So I can take that and flow it all the way back down. Let's go to this. We'll go down to 10%, so that when I move, all of this goes at a very slow, measured pace. So now we're going to put her back on the stabilizer on that one so that we can see the difference between what we're just shooting now and what you're going to see stabilized. Okay, so now she's on a stabilizer. It's basically, we're looking at the Moza Air Cross on that one. That was a Moza Air Cross 2. And you can see that even with her side-to-side movements, which is one key to keeping people interested, instead of having to cut from, every 2-3 seconds cut to a different angle. If you keep it moving slightly, give the brain just a little bit of a different perspective change each time, that keeps people interested without making them nauseated. So the other part to that is be careful with whip pans, very circular panning type movements called whip pans. A lot of times, so if she's whipping it to the side and whipping it back, she's doing it again, she's doing it again. Is that distracting for you? When we're looking at a scene, our eyes basically float really well inside our heads. And then the brain also does a little bit of fuzzy logic to make sure that what we're seeing is connected to what we just saw. And so when we mimic the motion and the stability of our own eyes, then that's something that's familiar, and that makes it easier for the viewer to look at what you're filming. And then again, if she's doing stuff that's distracting, whip pans and everything else, then the camera and the motion of the camera becomes the focus rather than the story you're trying to get across. Now, if the story I'm trying to get across is, hey, look at this camera, how fast it's whipping and so forth, then, that's a completely different thing. But if you have some story, you have an idea of what you want to present, how best can you present that story in a nice, steady, no camera involved way, or at least camera's not the focus of attention. The other is avoid bad audio. Now, a lot of us, especially when we're starting out, have a problem with that. Now, I'm doing a rushed video. We didn't know that it was going to be that windy today. My lav mic is hidden under the shirt, which helps disperse some of that noise. I will be doing some effects in post later to help bring down that buffeting if there is any. But there are alternatives that you can do. You can shoot where I'm facing away from the wind and where my back is to the wind, which means that there is nothing hitting the microphone. Or when, vehicles and so forth are traveling through, you don't want that sort of thing. So sometimes you'll wait until they are passed before you do it, like this. There's your pause. They're getting both, so we'll wait. They're actually mowing. Oh, they want to get it done before the Christmas rush. That's what that is. So we picked the wrong day to film, obviously, for audio. This is not a great example. It's not one of the best ones that I'm going to present to you. It's really loud here. Hopefully, because my voice is close to the mic, I'm able to filter out a lot of that. Again, the closer it is to the mic, the better. I'm going to speed up on this because they're going to be coming around for mowing the lawn. The other is not only the equipment that you use, it's also where you're shooting and things like that. You have to take into account for these variables that may come into play, which means you may be postponing some of the filming until later, and then you got to watch it. Does that make a difference with the sun? Does that make a difference with what you needed in the shot initially? So The other thing is to take a boom mic, a nice shotgun mic with the blimp on top of that and everything else. That cancels out all that wind noise, which is really great, which I do have, but I didn't bring today because we were going light on our equipment today. And the noise is going to be coming back in a second, so we're going to switch to something else. But lav mic, boom mic, second audio source. Have something where you're filming and recording two, even if one is just a scratch track that you can pull up in case your main lav mic for some reason went on the blitz for you and all of a sudden you've got no sound. Fritz, it's on the fritz, not the blitz. So in case the microphone for some reason goes on the fritz and you just got no audio for that, even if it's a half second or so, you can fill it in with the others and it's not as noticeable. For audiophiles, it will be immensely noticeable. It's like a Grand Canyon or a Himalayan mountain. But for the average viewer who is just trying to get to the content, it might be acceptable. If you're doing a full production shoot, all this external stuff has to be taken into account. And again, the audio and the microphone cannot be the focus of your shooting. However, it is right now, so that's why I can get away with some of this. The other is avoid blowing out your highlights. So now, as to carry over on our not to have bad audio, not only do we have lawnmowers going, but this is all for educational purposes. So you understand what really bad audio choices are. I'm doing this for you. Not only that, but we have jets going over. So if they can pass at the same time and go to another county, that'd be great right now. This particular case is now don't blow out your highlights. When you blow them out, they are unrecoverable. Unless you're shooting with a Blackmagic Pocket Cinema 4K or something with a really high dynamic range, like the Area Alexa. I've seen them recover some blown out highlight footage that was just phenomenal, but not everybody has $70,000 in their pocket for that. But the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema, but the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema 4K is priced well for the indie filmmaker and the documentary filmmaker, and they have 13 stops of dynamic range, which means you can recover quite a bit. The other is don't underexpose. Now, unless you're specifically looking for a particular type of effect, and again, the same thing goes for overexposure. If something is shot where it is underexposed, I won't be able to bring up the details. You won't be able to see certain details or certain bright values or midline values without a lot of noise, especially in the color spectrum. Color spectrum will be introducing an awful lot of noise. I do have footage that I can show you that was done underexposed. You get a little bit more information on that. It's really something to take care of right off the bat. If at all possible, shoot in RAW. RAW footage allows you a great leeway on either end to adjust for exposure and also to bring in detail and so forth without raising your noise floor. It also allows you to recover some of those highlights you thought you lost. Specifically, I shoot with the Blackmagic, so I'm using the B-RAW a lot, and that works really well. I know ProRes has RAW. I haven't been able to see that. That isn't out for some of our equipment, so until we get that down, I can't tell you other than that if you're shooting in ProRes itself, it's a nice codec, but it is baking in your exposure in the clip. So if your exposure is off, if it's blown out on the highlights, or if it's too low on the exposure, you will not be able to recover that, no matter how good the ProRes looks. So you have to have your exposure setting properly. But like I said, in RAW footage, that's all metadata, so you can just go back and you can change that on the fly. If you want ISO 200, you can make it 200. These have dual ISO, not the Lumix GH4, which you're looking at right now. They don't have quite the exposure range. But the Blackmagic Pocket 4K does have great 13 stops of dynamic range. So And again, it's metadata. So if you're using it on the low end, you typically shoot in the 400 ISO. And then you've got a variability between that. So if you're exposing for 400, you're going to be really great. On the other end, you have 3200. That's a dual ISO. So if you shoot at 3200 and then you expose for that, you're going to be fine, because then you'll be able to recover all the way up to all the way down to 1200. So raw footage allows you great leeway, allows you a great variability, and to pull in highlights, to recover things in the shadows that you didn't think you could normally. The other thing is avoid blurry footage. You can't fix blurry in post. If you've shot some of the best stuff on the planet, which I have done, maybe not on the planet, but I've shot some really good stuff, and it was perfect. It looked fine in the camera, but if I'm not wearing my glasses for the close-up look, or if the screen on the GH4, that screen is pretty small, you aren't going to see focus very well. So you want to make sure you either have a separate monitor that's bigger and that you can actually see what's going on, and that actually outputs to HDMI, so you can put that out to a monitor, second monitor. It works really well. And you can use the focus assist, so which puts in the red lines, blue lines, yellow lines, whatever you choose for your colors, or specific ones have specific colors. But that highlights what is in focus and what is not. Blackmagic Pocket 4K has a great big screen, so you can see a lot more of what's in focus on that thing than you can on the little GH4. The other thing to make that work is get yourself a focus card. And that's simply, you could even just get it on your iPhone or your iPad or whatever you have, and just take a screenshot of a focus card. You can download Vector Graphics for free that has a focus card that you can then use for the camera. And it's really important, because if I go out here and she stays where she is, it might look good on her screen, but man, until she gets this into play, if you want to, is that, there you go. Okay, now that's in focus. So this is used for those times that I need to make sure that we are rock solid on focus. And again, it's just slightly blurry is distracting, especially if your rest of your clips and the rest of that series is really pristine. It will stand out in a big way. So get the focus card, pull it out all the time. That's why I use this all the time. We definitely, it's got the color checker passport. They're not cheap, but they are durable. I mean, really durable. Small, they can fit inside your pocket, and you've got your full spectrum of your color that's required for it, which also then in DaVinci you can specifically put this pattern on there and it will adjust colors accordingly. So it's a nice quick way to get at least your start for your color grading. And then of course this gives you your sharp focus lines to help make sure that what you're shooting is clear. Okay, I hope that helped you. If you have any questions about that and anything else you want me to cover, let me know and I can go into detail or cover some things maybe I didn't cover this time. And please thumbs up and subscribe, because it really does help the channel grow. And that's it. Thank you.